Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Marketers' Data Management Challenges. John Donnellan from SiriusDecisions and Jamie Merritt from Progress will share the top data challenges that marketers are faced with and how to effectively solve them. This is Marlis Furs from the Progress Data Direct Studios in Morrisville, North Carolina. I'll be the host for today's session. Joining today's webinar from SiriusDecisions is John Donnellan, who is a research director located in the SiriusDecisions offices in Waltham, Massachusetts. John has more than 20 years of experience in the marketing operations as both a practitioner and consultant. Before joining SiriusDecisions, John was the Director of Sales Process and Technology for Iron Mountain, where he pioneered the use of Lean Six Sigma process improvement techniques to drive efficiencies and effectiveness throughout the sales and marketing funnel. Prior to that, he founded the marketing operations function within Iron Mountain and led several of its key disciplines, including marketing strategy development, planning and budgeting, reporting and analytics, data governance, and process improvement. John's experience includes implementing large-scale, enterprise-wide technology solutions for financial, government, and business services organizations. We also have Progress Data Direct's Vice President, Product Management and Marketing, Jamie Merritt. Jamie joins today's webinar from the Progress Data Direct Studios out of the North Carolina office. Jamie is an accomplished technologist and vendor strategy professional with over 15 years in the software industry. Prior to dedicating his focus to data, Jamie held a number of technical and business roles that focused on bringing new products to market and building successful business around them in the business process management, complex event processing, and integration SOA market landscapes. He is based out of the Progress Data Direct offices in Morrisville, North Carolina. With that, I would like to hand today's session over to John Donnellan. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Marlis, and thanks everyone for joining the webcast. I'm really excited to be here and to be sharing our perspective on data management, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion at the end. I think we've got some time carved out for Q&A at the end of this hour, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So let's get started. Let's see, we've got our agenda here set up. So I'm going to be speaking for the first set of the webcast, running through some of the top challenges that marketers are facing, how they're dealing with data and data management issues, and why it's so central to everything that marketing is doing as well. And then Jamie's going to jump in, and he's going to talk a little bit about same sort of topic, and he's going to review Progress's new product, Easel, and he's going to do a demo of that as well. And like I said, we'll have time for a little bit of Q&A at the end, so get those questions started as we get into this. So the first thing I want to do is to take a step back and not talk about data management challenges exactly, but let's talk a little bit about what challenges marketers are facing on the whole. And I want to move clockwise around this diagram and just highlight a few things that marketers are really wrestling with today. The first thing is, with the world having turned on its head in the last couple of years, moving from an outbound marketing and email strategy to more of an inbound and content-driven strategy, marketers are really wrestling with how to drive more awareness and preference for their products and solutions. Because, as we all know, buyers are doing more and more research online. They've got access to more information. They don't have to engage the salesperson as early. And so it's really important for organizations to be present on the web, to have a good reputation out there so that when people are doing their homework, they can be found and they can get a good impression of them. So driving that awareness and preference is a big issue right now for marketers. The second big issue is managing content. So along with that inbound strategy is developing and publishing great content that's targeted towards the audience that you care about, coming up with big pieces of content and atomizing that into the little bits that can be reused. And so that's something that we're seeing nobody's really fully mastered yet, and so that's a big challenge for marketers as well. And then trying to understand what that target market looks like. So doing effective segmenting and based on the personas that you care about, what are their attributes? How can we best identify who they are, what their propensity to buy is, where they are in the buyer's journey? All of that, that's one big pot of things that marketers are wrestling with today. And then on the softer side of things, one of the things we're seeing is the relationship between marketing and sales is one that's always in need of alignment. Whether it's the classic, hey, marketing, your leads stink, coming from sales and marketing yelling back, well, you never follow up on our leads. Even from that basic construct to just making sure at the person level that a demand manager in a given segment is working with the salesperson in that segment, and that they've got good relationships. And with the propagation of technology in marketing, the relationship back to IT, when that has to happen, that's really a big challenge for marketers as well. And then finally, what we're seeing at the top level is that CEOs are putting pressure on the senior leadership team in marketing, whether that's the CMO or the SVP, to prove to the rest of the organization what value marketing is bringing and what contribution they're adding to the business. Gone are the days of marketing being the T-shirt and coffee mug department. It's really got to add real value to the business. And so CMOs are under a lot of pressure to be able to deliver on that. And so as you can imagine, central to all of this is data and managing all this information that's out there and the ability to be able to bring it together in a cohesive way, in a way that provides intelligence and that drives the business forward. So I want to share with you some statistics that we have, and these are actually from Net Prospects, a data vendor, and the last couple of years they've run what they call their State of Marketing Data benchmark report. This past year they gathered over 61 million records into their report, and they came up with some interesting conclusions. One of them is that 88% of the records that they looked at, so 88% of those 61 million records, lacked industry, revenue, and employee size. Now that's lacked all three of those, not lacked just one of those. But still, that's a staggering number. I mean, industry, revenue, employee size are so central to how we segment our data and try and identify opportunities. And to see that big of a number is really, it's really a staggering number. On the plus side, the next stat down, 90% of the records that they looked at had fewer than 10% duplicates. So that's good. So duplicates, it's a constant headache for a lot of marketers and for marketing ops teams. But that was a little bit of improvement over last year, and it's at a fairly low level. And then the last couple we'd look at, about 2/3 of the records that they looked at didn't have a phone number, which is almost hard to believe. You'd want to think there was maybe at least a main number in there, but not a direct dial number, but not even a phone number contained in those records. And then only 35% were classified as functional or higher. And we'll talk a little bit more about what functional means, but essentially it's the ability to reach out to that contact, to be able to do decent level of segmentation, to put them in some kind of a bucket. And only about 1/3 of those records were classified that way. So, the data quality isn't in a great shape, that's really just one of the concerns for marketing ops teams and marketing teams in general is the quality of the data. When we look at what it takes to manage data and to manage it well, quality is the first piece of it, and that's where a lot of organizations tend to focus. Our data's terrible. We gotta go clean it up. We don't have enough of the right fields. The information that we have in there is terrible. We've got too many Mickey Mouses in there. We've got too many duplicates. So a lot of organizations tend to focus on quality, but just as important is the idea of bringing that data together, so unifying that data potentially from external sources, but also from the other internal sources that you have throughout the organization, and then providing easy access to that information. So, it's all well and good to bring all this information together, put it in one big database, but if it's not presented to people in a way that they can consume it, or it's not made available to them in a way that they can slice and dice the information, it's just not very useful. So one way of looking at the quality of data is to divide it up into a couple of different dimensions, a couple of different health dimensions. And when we look at helping our clients with assessing what their contact database looks like, we ask them to look at it in two different dimensions. So one is quality, certainly. So you want to look at, when you're looking at your contact database, how complete are those records? How valid are they? Again, it's great to have first name, last name filled out, but if it's Mickey Mouse, that's not doing you any good. And how fresh is the data? So, it might be you've got John Smith filled in there, and that's a good first name, last name, but if it's from 5 years ago, John's probably moved on to another company, or he's changed roles within his organization. So you want to look at all three of those aspects of the quality dimension. The other thing is you want to look at the coverage that you have. So it's great to have one pristine record with all the fields you would ever want to have filled out in there. But if you don't have that for the different personas that you're targeting, and a little bit more broadly the accounts that you care about, and more broadly than that, the different segments that you're targeting, then the data doesn't really do you any good. So in assessing the data, you want to look at a few different dimensions and understanding what it looks like in terms of quality. Another exercise that we work with our clients with, and they've found this really useful, is to not just take a binary view of completeness. So, is it complete or is it not? But to tier their records in terms of completeness. And, we suggest 4 levels of completeness. It doesn't have to be 4. It doesn't have to be these definitions. But the idea is that you're breaking up your contact database into different partitions so that you can understand what level of completeness the different records have. So at the low end, we have records that are considered unreachable, and these are ones where you don't have a good email address. You might have the main number, but not a direct dial. The contact record might be older than 36 months. And by the way, we use 36 months as a rough guide because we found that a quarter to a third of contact databases will go stale over a 12-month period. And so over 36 months, if you do nothing with those contacts, the whole thing is probably going to have gone bad. So that's why we draw the line there. And then moving up the spectrum a little bit, if you look at records that are classified as minimum, well, now you've got some level of ability to contact them. You might have an email address, you might have a phone number, but you don't have a lot of that ancillary information you would want to be able to segment them. Maybe you can't tell customer from prospect. You don't know what industry they're in or what the employee size is at their organization. So, yeah, you have some information, but it's not really usable. It's not really functional like we had referred to before. And now when you start getting kind of towards the other end of the spectrum, you move up to the basic records. Well, now you've got good contact information. You've got good ancillary information that'll let you do some segmenting. This is kind of the basic level that you want to be at in order to count these records as good or as functional. And then the complete ones, these are your gold records. So you might have multiple forms of contact. You've got their phone number, email address. You might have a Twitter handle. And you've got all that extra information that you would want to be able to segment them by. So, one way that we can bring this all together is to chart what the different pockets of contacts look like in order to understand their level of completeness, but then also to bump that up against the level of engagement that they've had, the recency. So as you can see, going up the y-axis, we've got profile completeness. So we've got the ones that, were in that unreachable category down at the bottom, and then growing through minimum, basic, complete, moving up the chart. And then moving left to right, it shows their level of engagement. So have they responded to outreach that you've given them in the last 12 and 36 months is where we draw the line. Again, as you chart this yourself, you can put the lines wherever you feel is appropriate for your organization. But the idea is the information that's contained in the 4 upper right-hand boxes. These are the ones that are they should be the ones that are considered the good records, the ones that you can use. So if you do any kind of reverse waterfall analysis at the beginning of the year, for example, in your annual planning process, and you say, okay, in order to hit our number, we're going to need to talk to, 100,000 names, for example. And you turn back to your database and you say, okay, well, how many names do we have? Well, we've got 60,000 names. Well, to count up those 60,000, those should be the ones that are in the upper right-hand 4 boxes there. The ones that are outside of those 4 boxes really aren't complete or recent enough to be counted towards robust records. But I think the interesting thing there is that these are great records that are, they have a great opportunity to go through a cleanse and append kind of service, or to be unified with other records that you might have in another part of the organization. So, one question I get from our clients is, oh, okay, so the incomplete and the inactive ones, we should just purge our database of those. Well, no, not necessarily. If you have the equivalent record, maybe in a customer care system or in a billing system, you may have more up-to-date information about that contact record, and you may have interesting data about them that your business cares about. So don't just dump them, but look to unify that data with other information that you have throughout the organization. So, completeness is, that's just one part of the puzzle. Unification is another big piece of it. Giving easy access to the information and is the third. And what I wanted to share with you finally was what we see as 4 basic approaches that organizations are taking towards marketing data and the management of that data. So the first one is really just doing the basics. And, this is something we see in a lot of startups where managing data just isn't a priority. It's a limited number of resources. We've got other priorities that are taking place. There may not even be a marketing ops team that's fully formed that would even have ownership over owning the data. And we also see it in some more mature organizations as well, where the bad habit of not managing data on an ongoing basis has developed. And and now they don't have anybody watching out of it, and it's kind of spinning out of control. And what you see in this category is that somebody screams every so often about how bad the data is. Everybody does a fire drill and does a massive data cleanup project, and then a year later you're back where you started from. So nobody really owns the data. Nobody really takes any care over keeping it up to date. So that's just kind of the basics. And prioritize, moving around the diagram, now there's a little bit more resource to put towards data management. So it might be part of somebody's job. You might have carved out a role as a data steward, but you may still not have the resources, the money, or the time to be able to put towards keeping all of your data clean. And so in this situation, what you do is you've identified a handful of data elements that you think are most important to the business, and you put the focus on keeping those things clean. So it might be, a handful of attributes around the contact record. It might be some account information if marketing owns that. But the idea is you can't boil the ocean. You can't do everything. So let's limit the scope and at least make sure that data is managed really well. And then the last 2 approaches are sort of flavors of one another. And it's the idea of bringing together data into one place. And so the first one is the sales and marketing version of that, where you're not going to try and bring together all the information from across the organization. You're just going to worry about your world. You're going to worry about marketing data, or maybe a little bit more broadly, sales and marketing data. And there's a couple of different flavors of this approach, too. So what some organizations are doing are extending an operational system that they already have in place, like a Salesforce.com, which is a great wide open platform. And they say, all right, you know what? That's going to be our source of the truth. We're going to sync everything into Salesforce. That's going to be our source of the truth for contact, for accounts, for transactions that we have. And we're going to do all the reporting out of Salesforce. And that's going to be the source of the truth. We're going to leverage that as an operational system. The other way of approaching it is to say, well, we're still just going to worry about sales and marketing data, but we're going to put into place a separate database, and we're going to have all our operational systems flow into that database as the database of record. We're going to standardize and normalize the data as it passes through into that data store, and then again we'll use that for all our reporting, for our list pulls, etc. So that's the third version, is just worrying about the sales and marketing side of things. And then the fourth one is plugging into an enterprise data warehouse that may exist. So the idea here is, again, you're taking the operational systems that exist in sales and marketing, and if they don't already, you're flowing them into the enterprise data warehouse, where they're going through an ETL process, extract, transform, and load, where, again, things are getting standardized, normalized, combined with data from the rest of the organization. And then you're building a marketing data mart coming off of that. And so now you're extracting out of this huge warehouse of information the elements that you care about, presented in the way that you care about, and it could be joined with that customer care and billing information. So you get a broader perspective of the customer. This is a tough one to undertake if an enterprise data warehouse doesn't already exist. It's not usually in marketing's capabilities to build something like this out. But if there is one that exists, then this is an option that we're seeing organizations take, is to plug into that in order to cleanse and to unify the data. But there's actually a fifth approach that we're seeing that's emerging, and it's an interesting one, and it's the idea of using an integration layer to connect the data within the organization. So it saves you the headache of having to perhaps work with IT and all of their processes and plug into the way they do things and have to build a data mart that'll come off of the main data warehouse. It saves you the idea of the task of building, even if it's just within sales and marketing, of building a separate data store for that information. The idea is that there's an integration layer, a piece of software that will almost spider into the different operational systems, pull out the information that you care about, and then organize it in a way, clean it in a way that makes sense to you, and then you can analyze it, you can present it back to the consumers of the data in the way that they care about. And that's what Jamie's going to talk a little bit about, is Progress is offering in that space. And I'll turn it now over to Jamie to run with that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about Progress Easel and how we can help marketeers and sales operations and people in the line of business get control of this data management problem and to self-serve their needs and start solving some of these problems that John so eloquently put forward to us. So, when we were thinking about Easel, we started really with the question is, why is being effective in sales and marketing operations, why is it still so hard? And very often what we found is that everyone has an idea of where they want to end up, whether they're doing segmentation exercises or they're trying to get their hands around their content. They want to get to this beautiful picture they see on the right where everything about their business is presented to them in an easy to understand interface. They can make real-time decisions about what they should do next based on historical performance, based on the present performance, and they can run their business all from this one dashboard, this one cockpit. Or they're going to build sophisticated analytical models that are going to predict buying patterns and assess the quality of various leads and prospects that they're interacting with. But for whatever problem you're trying to solve, out of the many that John covered, you have a picture of what the end goal looks like, but where you start is this massive complexity you see here on the left. You have Excel spreadsheets that are flying around the organization and email. You have data spread across Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using, your marketing automation solution, Eloqua, Marketo, etc. You may have enterprise data warehouses. You may have relational data marts you use. You may have other packaged applications where this data lives. So even though you have this beautiful picture of where you want to end up, you often have a very significant struggle in the beginning of any successful analytics or BI initiative or really any initiative that involves data, because you start with this mess of information that's available on the left. And really the goal of Easel is to help you go as quickly as possible from this mess of everything on the left into your goal of doing analysis, understanding your information, understanding your data better, and sharing it with the rest of the organization, sharing those insights. Let's look a little bit at how we do that. So I always ask the question, why is this so hard? Well, it's so hard because your data isn't unified, going back to some of the things John was talking about. Even if you have good quality in your individual systems, you have data distributed across all these different locations. So when I'm thinking about, let's say I want a 360-degree view of my customer, or that single view of customer that we're all struggling to achieve, well, if I want to look at my future opportunity, well, certainly my opportunities in my pipeline for that customer are extremely important. So you usually get that information out of my CRM. If I'm thinking about what holds their interest for the future, what are other opportunities, what are other things I can sell them, well, I'm going to look at how they're engaging with my marketing content, with my content on my website, or what campaigns they're responding to. Often that comes in from Google Analytics or comes in from my marketing automation system to in-house. Here we use Eloqua, but we support a variety of them in our tools. And finally, I have a lot of historical information, whether it's invoice detail in my ERP system, or social information I may have in my big data cluster, or any other myriad of information we can have strewn around our organization about this customer, support information in a support desk application. To get the accurate picture of the customer, to get that single view, I'm required to cleanse, unify, and actually provide a way of accessing that data in order for me to understand anything about this specific customer. Otherwise, I only get one lens, one view if I go to one single system. So to get that complete picture, I really have to bring that data entirely together in order to assess anything I'm trying to figure out about a customer. So how do we do this today? Well, it's really unfortunate how we do it today because it usually involves a lot of manual labor. We use brute force mechanisms where, I know people in marketing operations teams that spend every week on Monday their entire day exporting data in CSV files from 20 different systems, manually cleaning them up in Excel, blending them together, creating one master list using something like Excel or Access, and then sharing it with the rest of the organization. Getting the email that you get every week that shows, what's changed from a revenue perspective. So sharing it out over email or sharing it over Dropbox. So these are, the tools that are, I'll say, state of the art today that people are applying to solve their problems. Now, there's other IT solutions that John mentioned, things like ETL and data warehouses. But usually, at least, from my history, I need an answer. When I need an answer for these types of activities, I need an answer today. I need an answer this week. I don't have time to wait for these other teams to put all this information into the data warehouse or to create a customized report. That could take weeks and months. And I need an answer today or tomorrow. So the only option I have is to resort to these extremely manual brute force mechanisms. And for all of us that deal with these mechanisms day in and day out, well, we know all of the limitations of this approach, whether it's that every report starts from scratch. Every time I do an export or every time there's new data, I'm doing those same manual cleaning activities. I'm taking the 15 different IBMs I have in my CRM system and blending them into one representation of that particular account. It's manual, so it's error prone as well. I'm making typos as I do these things. I'm sharing over email, so there's no history, no versioning. I mean, all in all, these are not repeatable. These aren't scalable processes. So as your data problems evolve, as you have more and more systems involved, these processes and these Excel-based approaches quickly break down, and you no longer have visibility into all the information you need. Now, why is this such a problem? Well, when we think about the process, there's really 4 steps you're trying to get to. If in this particular case, we're looking at sort of a data to dashboard process, and I'll show you a bit of a demo of that later. But really, there's initially accessing the information, all of that mess we showed on the left in the beginning slides, preparing the data, blending it together, making it look and act in a way you would expect to be able to do further analysis on it, removing null entries, removing duplication, improving the quality of the data, converting all the currencies into one particular currency. Anything you need to do to prepare your data for analysis. Where I found, the industry has truly innovated in steps 3 and 4, the analysis, the presentation of that information. We have these great visualization tools out there like Tableaus and ClickText, ClickViews, and a variety of others, whether it's Spotfire, even your traditional reporting tools, your business objects, your crystal reports, your microstrategies, etc. There's a variety of approaches that allow you to analyze your information, to present your information to the rest of the team. But steps 1 and 2 have really been left as an exercise for the reader or an exercise for IT. So what we find is there's this real chasm, we call it a chasm of complexity, between the preparation of data and the actual analysis and presentation of data. While business users are comfortable visualizing and analyzing and making decisions based on their data in steps 3 and 4, there's a ton of time, some estimates up to 80% of that time is spent just preparing that data for analysis. Before you can get any value out of it, you have to spend a ton of time preparing that data so it's ready to be consumed by tools, by the algorithms you're creating, or by the visualizations you're you're creating. So a lot of your time is spent there. And really, this requires skills that usually live outside of our marketing operations teams and outside of our sales operations teams. We usually have to engage with IT. We usually have to engage and build a data warehouse. We need a custom integration solution, a variety of the solutions that John spoke about in his section. So what we've been trying to do with Easel is really bring together steps 1 and 2 with 3 and 4 and make that entirely self-service for marketing operations or sales operations. Someone in the line of business using a tool like Easel can now accomplish the entirety of this data to dashboard process that we present here without spending 80% of his time munging in the data and trying to find out how to get it from different sources and spending all their time in Excel and emailing out all this information. Really trying to think through how do we deliver the entirety of this for the marketeer, instead of relying on those IT skills or technology skills that aren't as prevalent in those teams. We have a variety of capabilities we bring to bear to solve these problems. The key ones I'll outline briefly for you, but bringing together, uniting those fragments of data is fundamental. As John went through, the unification of data, providing access to that data is so important. So whether I have 10 different systems that the information about a customer lives in, I need to be able to bring those together in a coherent way so I can make them available for analysis. My data lives everywhere as well, whether it's sits on-premise in enterprise data warehouses or relational data or operational systems like ERP systems, but it's more and more often available in the cloud. So Progress Easel can bring together data, unify those fragments of data wherever they live, whether they're sitting in an on-premise database, whether they're sitting in a big data infrastructure that you're storing all social information in, or they're sitting in a SaaS application like Marketo in the cloud, or Google Analytics for that matter. Any of these applications Easel has access to and can bring data into. We've thought really through, with Easel, we really thought through the last mile of this. I very rarely work on any project alone at this point. So it's very often, I'm doing work within a team, and I need to be able to share that information with other members of my team. So instead of sending these reports around by email, Easel provides a different way of collaborating on that information, a much more managed approach to that we'll show you when I do a bit of a demo for Easel soon. A lot of the complexity of data access, of unification, is really understanding the underlying schemas of all these applications that you're dealing with. So Salesforce, when I open up my Salesforce database and I try to do anything particularly aggressive, I'm dealing with 200 different types of objects, all that are deeply interrelated. My contact object alone has about 200 different columns on it when you combine together the custom attributes we have and the standard ones that come with Salesforce. So this, once again, is a kind of a mind-exploding kind of problem if you don't have this familiarity with, deep data tools and you don't know the underlying schemas so well. So we build in a lot of templates inside the box with Easel so you can get started without having to know all the nitty-gritty of how everything is stored inside of all these different applications. We make you productive right out of the box using templates that know about how Salesforce stores contacts and opportunities and how they're related to various contacts in Eloqua. As an example. And then finally, Easel's delivered as a cloud service. So, once again, you can take advantage of Easel starting today and just go and sign up and use Easel and never have to install a server and never have to install anything outside of your own local machine and just be productive from day one instead of waiting for a deployment and having, once again, more operations and IT involvement. Because it's a cloud service, you can just get started with no infrastructure and nothing to manage. A little bit more about how this works, and then I'll just jump into a demo and show you how it works. But everything in Easel starts with a browser and a template. So you're using your browser to configure what you want to integrate, and that template captures information about the systems you have in place, whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or Marketo or Google Analytics or Eloqua, as well as being able to blend together data from on-premise systems like Oracle or SQL Server or your data warehouse or your Hadoop infrastructure. That template defines how we're going to blend and unify this data. So I've selected a template, I've selected what sources I'm going to access that information from, I've configured that in the browser, And then we're going to carry out a couple steps on it. We're going to union together and join together the information into a unified model. So even though the data about my customer started out spread across all these disparate systems, I'm bringing them together into one model that I'm going to use for analysis. Let's say we're trying to do a segmentation exercise. I'm getting all that customer information from a variety of locations and bringing them together. Maybe I'm only responsible for a particular region, so I'm able to filter that on its way in, or as I deliver that information to others. We can improve the quality of the data. We can deduplicate it, for example, and make sure there's no duplicates in the final model. We can enrich it with other information. And finally, we can keep that data fresh. So as new updates occur, we can bring those updates into Easel. So you always have that one clean and available private copy of your information sitting in the cloud for you to access. Now, once that information is available, what can we do with it? Well, first and foremost, we want to share it with people. So we have this thing called the Easel Gallery that I'll show you in a moment. It feels and acts a lot like Dropbox or Box or any of the file sharing utilities you use. We have a folder system, and we're plugging in different slices of the data. So I can say, every morning when I walk in, I walk up to my desk, and then I turn my computer on, and inside of Easel, it updates and says, your daily leads are now available. So every morning, the latest leads come out of the system, come out of Salesforce, come out of Eloquent, other locations, and it always pops up immediately on my desktop. I never had to connect to Easel. I never had to open up a browser. My gallery is responsible for just keeping my data and my views of the data in synchronized with the data as it changes in the back-end systems. Easel just does that for you automatically. Any views that you have, when the data updates, will regenerate those and make sure they're available on your local file system. So I can look at my leads sitting in an Excel spreadsheet every morning, never knowing where it came from or it came from Easel, but just trusting that it's up to date and able to work on it even when I'm on a plane, because it's just sitting there as a file on my file system. We can also connect with BI tools. So I have a lot of analysts in my team as well, and in our marketing operations team. They can connect directly with their favorite tool of choice, whether it's Tableau or Click or any other tool that supports standards-based access, of which every BI tool does. So you can connect directly into the Easel storage and do your own exploratory analysis. And finally, as I mentioned, Easel can schedule and automate all of that, all of the updates. So every time the data changes, every evening, every day I have new leads, Easel pulls that data, keeps it fresh for me, and makes it available for me without me ever having to actually log in ever again. So Easel, with all of these capabilities, really gets you through steps 1 and 2, that analysis, the access and preparation of data, and accelerates my time until I'm actually getting insight from that information. And it does it all for me automatically. And we're going to show you how to do it, I think, right now. I was right. So I'm going to jump into a demo real quick. To tee up the problem, I'm going to do, I think it was the 3rd problem on John's list. I'll do something with contact segmentation. So when I'm working with contacts inside of Progress, I have data in a few different places. I have a lot of my customer records are sitting inside of Salesforce. In some cases, there are lists that I purchased, people that have never had an opportunity or an account associated with them, and I have a bunch of prospects also sitting inside of Eloqua. And there's a ton of overlap because there's many times where I have those records both in Salesforce and Eloqua. I also have a local relational database that we have some of our legacy information in. So the business that we did before we adopted our new CRM solutions, I still have sitting around in various operational systems. So whenever I want to do a contact segmentation exercise and understand our customers better or target better, I really have to bring together data from all these different sources, deduplicate them, and get down to that list of 1 million or so unique contacts that I'm going to be working with coming from all these different systems. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to use Easel to do that. Give me a moment while I share my desktop. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is I have Easel sitting here running, and this says go to my Easel Gallery. So this is that Dropbox-like interface I mentioned before, and you'll see I have a daily leads a directory inside of my Easel Gallery, and inside there I see my daily lead dashboard, which is about 13 megabytes right now. And it was updated today at 5:34 a.m. So every day, whenever I walk in, Easel updates this file automatically, giving me the latest data available on my local file system. So now when I disconnect and I jump on a plane, I still have all that information at my beck and call. I could do reporting on it using whatever tool I like, because everything supports Excel. So let's look at how I would set something like that up and try to get all of my contacts, that million contacts that we talked about, into one nice file for me to do some analysis on. And I will try to get you from data to dashboard in record time. So I click on my Easel Gallery, I go to the Easel website. I'm just going to go into Easel. Progress has a broader portfolio of cloud services, so I had an entry point into a variety of those. So now I'm in my main stage of my main landing page on Easel, and you'll note I still have my daily leads in there as well. So that gallery is available both online as well as using that little client tool I used before. So I'm going to create a report. Now I see that list of templates that I had available. Remember, I mentioned those before. So we support all the different systems that are in use around in many different marketing teams and across your IT infrastructure in general in some cases. So we support relational databases, we support marketing automation like Eloqua, web analytics like Google, HubSpot, Marketo, etc., Microsoft Dynamics, and all of these different relational and SaaS and data warehouse systems are available through Easel. So I'm going to look for a template that works with Salesforce, Eloqua, and SQL Server. And look at this one. I set this one just for myself. I choose this template. Let me go through the process of creating a new data set to pull together these million contacts. So I click Create a New Data Set. Now it says, well, this template is made to work with Salesforce, Eloqua, and SQL Server. Tell me about those. I will. And I'll just make a new one. Data source name. Okay, and all I need to know is my Salesforce username and password, which, because it's a demo, I'll probably get wrong. Let's see. See, that's all I ask. So username, password. I click Add Source, and suddenly I have Salesforce for my Sirius demo. Eloqua, same process. I'll just create a new one. Eloqua, Sirius demo. And this is Jamie.Merritt. And Eloqua requires you to have one more field, as many of you who are users know. So I add my company, username, and password. Once again, there's another source. And in the interest of time, I'll just choose one that already exists for SQL Server. SQL Server, I have one, I have two, they're really the same thing. Local MS SQL Server. So now, everyone, Salesforce, Eloqua, etc., they all have great schemas out of the box, but we all customize them pretty significantly. So I'm just going to click here and add fields that aren't included in the template. So here's what the template is pulling, and it's pulling into one contact detail object, a lot of information about my account. So I'm going to do segmentation maybe on industry and on things like where are they located, so what country and postal code, but I don't have some fields that I want. So what field do I want to add into it? Well, it's going to be based on all of the custom attributes we've added inside of Progress to Salesforce or inside of Progress to Eloqua or even in that SQL database that it wasn't connecting to before. Let's use what John was guiding us before. So I have these data quality scores in here, and let me add those in. So data quality score, data quality description, wonderful. So those are the two fields. I'm adding them only from I think it was my Salesforce contact that has those, because I have some messy data in Salesforce. So these are custom attributes specific to Progress that are in our data. And I'm going to say I want that to be in this new data set we create. So new data set for Sirius. And now what I can do is, remember we said we can keep that data up to date. Let me schedule how often I do that. So I do contact segmentation monthly maybe, just to sort of see how trends are changing, maybe quarterly. So let's say I want this data to be up to date every quarter. My fiscal year actually starts in December. The first day, beginning of Q1 through Q4 at midnight, let's update that, and I'm in this time zone. I click Apply. Okay, so now I have a new data set from Salesforce, SQL Server, and Eloqua that's going to be loaded every quarter, a day after the beginning of the quarter at midnight, and I'm going to filter that data set. And let me say, I only want, John, I think, defined level 3 of data quality as basic. So I'm going to say, give me greater than or equal to basic, so I can do the industry and the title and a few things that are part of that. So I could do that. I could add other, and it's not less than whatever. You know, I could do quite a bit of filtering on any of the fields we have prior to bringing any of the data into Easel. And now the only step left is to hit load and create data. And that, if I do, it will start pulling about 1 million different records into Easel and deduplicating that. So I'm going to go and this is real data, so let me be somewhat confidential, and I'll do things like title, and I'll grab what state, or so let's do postal code and country, and I'll also take the industry of their account, and maybe their first name, because I'm going to want to say hello Jamie. Okay, now look across here. You see we have the industry, we have their first name, we have their shipping country, we have postal code, etc. So perhaps I am just, I'm focused on Americas today. I click here. Let me filter this data a little bit. So I'm going to want all United States data. So I'm going to turn that off, and let's say United States, and I'll do USA in case there's some USAs in there. And maybe there's even a US or two in there. Look, I was right. So I'm going to apply that. So we use a very simple Excel-like approach to do filtering here. So this is your live data. We see it in Easel. And I have already chosen and pulled out all of the different values here so you can select it. Now, I also want to look at titles. So now there's 22,000 pages of titles here. So that's not really going to let me click like I'm in Excel. But if I were in Excel, I'd do something like a custom filter. So let me do something like that. And I'll say, let's just make sure that it has a value. So that means it contains something. So now I have my titles. Everything is in the United States. And I'll also want to know industries. I'll do another one that just says, as long as it has an industry, I'm going to want to deal with it. Okay. So now this is a pretty reasonable set of information to do some analysis based on. Let me save and close that. Okay, it's for Sirius. We're going to say these are US contacts with title, I can't type for this, and industry, demo. And I'm going to say, well, I'm going to put this in my gallery in a For Sirius directory called this. And what formats do I want to see it in? Well, I will do Excel, and I use Tableau a lot to do my dashboarding. I'll put it in both Excel and Tableau. Now, what Easel's doing is it's taking, we've pulled in a whole bunch of data from all these different systems. We've deduplicated them. We've made them unique. And now what we're doing is it's generating that particular view we just configured, the industries. And you'll note, I just got a little notification here that inside my gallery there's 2 new files, or 1 new one right now, which is UX contacts with title and industry, and another one just popped up that was my Excel file. So let me see how I would go right to the dashboard and create a quick one to show you how easy it is to get to analyze our data that comes out of Easel, as opposed to dealing with all that underlying ugliness you get from the underlying data sources. So I'll do one by geo and say, let's do shipping country by number of records, and we'll do that. Okay, well, you remember I filtered everything down to the United States, so that's not particularly interesting. So let me do it by zip code, which we also pulled in. Here we go. That looks like real data now. Okay, so these are the distribution across the United States of where we do the most business in the sampled records that I gave you. I'll also do something by industry. And I'll do something like, let's make a tree map kind of view of this. So this is, the different colors represent different industries. The size of them represent the number of records we have. And obviously I want to know what industry we're talking about. So, in Progress we do a lot of partner business. So technology software is our biggest sector, you can see. And then finally I'll do by title. And you remember there are so many titles in there. I'll probably have to filter a little bit more. So, yep, there's a lot of titles there, including numeric titles. Who knows what that means? So let me filter this and say, I'll take the top 10 number by number of records. There we go. And now finally, I'm going to want to dashboard that. So let's say on top I use my map, and then I'm going to want to see by industry and by title. And let me just do some quick magic. I'll use this as a filter, I'll use this as a filter, and I'll use this one. And now, I would like to say 5 minutes, but I've probably been demoing for about 10. So in the last 10 minutes, I now have a way of doing my segmentation and figuring out in the technology software sector, for example, this is where they're located in relative volume with each other. And the titles I see in technology software are developers mostly. But maybe if I went into banking, where everyone's a vice president in many cases, I'll see some more. There we go. There's some VPs. If I went to manufacturing, we have a lot of project managers. I could turn that off and say, well, I'm planning a road trip, and let me see who the best people for me to visit are. And I could take, I'm looking in California. Well, I have a lot of technology software customers out there, but maybe I want to meet with a certain level of person, so I'm looking for CFOs or CIOs out there, etc. So in very quick time, in about 12 minutes now, I went from data to dashboard using Easel, pulling data out of 3 systems, doing deduplication, and was able to effectively dashboarding. So steps 1 through 4 in less than 30 minutes, which I am always very happy about being able to do, because now I can actually start making decisions and understanding my customer base as opposed to mucking around in Excel. So with that, I think that really concludes the demo portion of here and my presentation, certainly. I want to open up the floor for questions and comments, and if you'd unmute John as well so he can be on.
Sure can. So, John, we've got your line back up, and we're going to just, we'll wait a second for a few more questions to come in. Right now, we do have one that's come in, and I'll read that out, and you two can decide who's going to take it. What are some of the best practices you're seeing around managing sales and marketing data?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jamie. I'll jump in here if you don't mind, and then you can add your perspective if you'd like. One of the most important things is to treat data management as a thing. I think it's I talked earlier in the webcast about how it just kind of falls through the cracks sometimes, and so I think when you can assign ownership to data management, when you can have a plan for what you're going to do for the year and execute against that. That's really important. The other thing is to understand that data is there to enable the more forward-facing business processes. So Jamie just ran through a great demo of how you can really easily pull this information together, and that it really fills a hole in the marketplace with being able to unify the data. But it really kind of starts with asking a question: what information do we want to know? What business processes are we struggling with because we don't have the intelligence or the information that we need? And so you go and you look at those where data is going to most be beneficial and start asking the right questions, and then you can turn back to the data and pull it all together so that you can answer those questions and drive those processes. I'd say those are some of the best practices, and then the last one is really to measure what you're doing. Data management feels like it's something that's, we've got to do it. It's not sexy, but, okay, we'll do it. And people really struggle with how do I get ahead to be a data steward, or how do I get funding to get the tools that I need? And the thing to do is to, snap the chalk line now, baseline where you are, and then as you improve things, measure how well you're doing with data management, and also measure how well you're doing with impacting the activities that the different data supports.
Okay, great. And Jamie, does Progress Easel also integrate with social marketing platforms?
social marketing platforms. So today we integrate with most leading marketing automation capabilities. We also have a variety of ways of getting additional data sources that we don't have in the box outside of Easel. So we've certainly seen social data being pulled into Easel. Often we pull it from a big data cluster, for example, or we've used a standards-based connectivity to pull data in. But we don't have any built-in sources today. That is something that's on our roadmap, though, and if there's a particular need, that's something I'd be really interested in talking about, because that is one of our short-term goals, is to bring in social information in addition to all the web analytics and marketing automation information we have access to today.
The question is, John, your tiers of customer records included responsive as the highest level. Do you ever segment your data into a higher tier, perhaps called fans or tribe?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that has, it gets a lot into the customer experience and customer advocacy. I haven't seen a lot of organizations doing that, but as we start to take a closer look at the customer life cycle, and the buyer's journey kind of leads up to the customer life cycle. The idea is you want to get someone on board, but then you want to keep them happy and you want to turn them into advocates. I think that's a great extra layer to add in there, so that not just they're in the database and you have information about them, but some kind of measurement in terms of how happy they are, even to the point of being advocates for your business. So I haven't seen a lot of that with the organizations that I talk to, but I think it's a great idea.
Can you talk about licensing? How much and what are the terms?
Sure. There's many different ways of licensing Easel. It's a cloud product, so let's see. What are the key attributes? Well, it's always subscription pricing. We generally ask you how many users are going to be using Easel. It starts at free. So, anyone can be part of Easel. Anyone can run the Easel Gallery on their desktop and get their daily leads updated for them every day from these systems. It goes up by per user pricing. We have individual plans. So it ranges from free to be really a sharing user, so someone can share information with you through Easel, all the way up to the premium users, which are the ones that are creating your data sets. Usually your marketing analysts would be those. So from $0 to about $200 to $250 a month for individual users. However, we have corporate plans, so there's a lot of volume discounting options available. We at Progress have a 30-year history of working with ISV partners. We're working with some ISV partners around Easel as well, and those are usually very custom partner-driven things. So the key points are we have a number of flexible models. They're all subscription-oriented because this is a cloud service, and we go from free all the way up to affordable.
Okay, and it looks like we have one more question that's come in. How are best-in-class companies leveraging data to be more effective?
That feels like a broader question, so I think John, because of your exposure to everything out there in marketing, would be great to answer. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, so I think in part it comes back to those best practices we ended up touching on a little bit earlier. But the other thing is, on one of those points around looking back at the business processes that data supports, there are, our research shows that there are 6 key areas where data really has a big impact. And those areas are market intelligence, which is both big white space analysis, but then also segmentation, inbound personalization, so anything you're doing on the web to customize the content or to shorten forms, lead scoring, lead routing, outbound outreach, which is both marketing outreach, email outreach, and then also, what the sales rep is doing, picking up the phone for the first time and talking to the prospect or customer, and then in reporting and analytics. So, when we look at, how people are leveraging data the best, they're turning back to those, those are the top 6 processes where data really has an impact, but it might be a little bit different at your organization, but the idea is, you're taking a business perspective first and looking at the business outcome first. That's what you're leading with, and saying, okay, what can we do with data to really drive better effectiveness, better efficiency with what we're doing? and then doing kind of a gap analysis around how well your data is structured, how well it's filled in, and then putting a plan in place to close the gap for supporting those business processes. So it's not around cleaning up data for the sake of cleaning it or bringing it all together for the sake of doing it because it seems like the right thing to do, but really it starts with a business question first and then driving the data architecture behind that to support it.
Thank you, John. So I think that's the end of our questions here and certainly the end of our time. First and foremost, I want to thank John Donlan from SiriusDecisions. John, thank you for your participation today. It made it a very compelling presentation from you, and I hope those in the audience can see how Easel can help you solve many of those problems that John spoke about. So thank you very much for everyone's time today. I do hope that you follow up with us. Please go to Progress's website, see Easel. We're going to be sending all of you an email out.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, John. Thanks again for joining today. Bye-bye.